Lighting Makeovers, a video tutorial series on how to transform your 3D imagery to the next level using the art of lighting. It's simple. 3D artists like yourself maybe send scenes with great potential to us. We light them using HDR Light Studio for you to observe and learn about the role of lighting in 3D imagery creation. The 3D artists then get the transformed scenes back. So, without further ado, let's get started. Matthias Wiegert, a 3D artist based in Germany who specializes in automotive 3D imagery. The Nissan Qashqai project has caught our attention the most. The project was made using Cinema 4D and rendered in Redshift. Cars are really reflective, with chrome, glass and painted metal surfaces. Lighting a car is primarily about controlling the reflections seen in these surfaces. Every car's shape and design is unique, so it makes sense that the lighting will also be unique to that car and the chosen camera angle. If you move the camera angle, the reflections will move. That is why it's important to fix the camera view before the lighting process is started. The aim of the image is to make the car design look really good. Therefore, the lighting needs to complement the styling lines and the form of the vehicle. In fact, lighting is actually used to reveal the design of the vehicle through a single image. In this video, Mark from Lightmap will be using HDR Light Studio to light the Nissan Qashqai project. So Mark, let's get this scene open and take us through this project.
Hello, it's Mark here from Lightmap, and I'm going to light this Nissan Qashqai vehicle. So we've got this scene sent to us. Here it is. I didn't create it. A user out there has created it, and let's just take a look at what's actually going on to start with. So let's go to Redshift and start the render view. Press play. Okay, and basically this is what we're dealing with. This is the shot and the lighting at the moment. And the goal of this is, can we improve this? Can we make this image look really great by improving the lighting? So let's just close this render view and create a new camera. And then let's make sure we're looking through the new camera. And we'll zoom out so we can see what's going on in this scene. So we've got this backdrop scoop. I'm going to look at the lights we've got. So these lights here that are in the scene, they're not actually being used. I can delete those. These are not being used either. So we've just got one spotlight actually lighting this scene. So we're going to get rid of that as well. And let's get rid of these that are locking the cameras. And let's go back to camera 50mm. So if we just have done a little search on the Qashqai, and we're going to go for some kind of studio style lighting on this that's got this kind of feel about it. So that's the kind of thing we're aiming for. So let's hide that out of the way. And we don't need this scoop. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually get rid of that scoop because we want the model to see the whole HDRI map. So I'm going to try and use the map to produce as much lighting as possible, and then I'm going to use area lights for lighting details and things where lights need to get close to the model. So we don't need that, but I will create a plane, and the plane, let's scale that up. And let's get the studio floor on there, and then let's get a tag for Redshift on there and make that a shadow catcher basically. So enable the matte, enable shadows. So that will be our shadow catcher, which will be very useful. And yeah, that's fine. We don't want that to be visible in reflections or to cast shadows or to be visible in refractions. So that should be the floor as a shadow catcher setup. I'd like to tweak the camera angle a little bit. Let's just zoom in a bit. Okay, so that's my camera angle. And I'm just going to make sure these are all hidden. Because when we did some light painting, I was unsure if the camera visibility overlapping the view was causing a problem. So I've just hidden the cameras so you can't see anything to do with those. And in terms of this scene, the main body of the car is a subdivision surface. And what is happening with this is it will slow down. So I think this has been applied to this model to make it nice and smooth. But it means that behind it, there's incredibly complicated geometry. So when we're lighting this and we use our light paint tool, it makes it quite slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just during the lighting process, I am going to get that and unparent it, get it out from under this subdivision surface. Nothing particularly changes. The model might not be quite as smooth. And after you've finished, if you really want to go back to this super duper subdivided surface, you can pop that geometry back in. So that's just a few bits of preparation we've done to try and make everything go smoothly. So now let's go to the HDR Light Studio panel, which I've got docked. If it's not there, you just basically go to Plugins, HDR Light Studio Connection. It will open the panel and then you can dock it down here. So in this scene, we don't have any lighting whatsoever. So if I go to Redshift and do the render view now and press play, that is purely being lit by a default light that's there when there's no other lighting. So there's no lights in the scene. So we'll close that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add a pre-built hook in the HDR Light Studio connection. The renderer is set to Redshift, and this will create a Redshift environment light that we will connect to with HDR Light Studio. So we'll press start, and then HDR Light Studio will open. Excellent. I've kind of rearranged my HDR Light Studio interface, which has a layout that's pretty good for this kind of work. So I've dragged, so just to show you, the presets panel, I can drag this and I can tab it up with this view, and then you drag not by the tab itself, you drag by the name of the panel here. So if I drag this, pop it on top of here, these have all got tabbed together. So I quite like having my presets taking up a load of space so I can see exactly the lights and easily find them. And it's quite nice having the light properties nice and big as well, so you don't need to scroll up and down a lot. So that's how I've arranged it for this. We don't need to use our inbuilt render view for HDR Light Studio. That's our own renderer, so we'll actually close that panel because we'll do this all through the render view that connects with Cinema 4D and displays the Redshift render directly inside us, which is cool. So let's press play, and then that will start rendering in Cinema 4D and Redshift. Right. And what I want to do is if I go to the render view settings and pick Cinema 4D Redshift and let's look at this image at 100%, not fit to the view, but 100%. So we get one-to-one display of this image, which is basically the best quality. We're not squeezing it down. So that's great. So what I'm going to start with lighting this is I'm going to edit this background gradient ramp to create a nice effect in the car. That's where I'm going to start this process. So the graduation from the top to the bottom is controlled with this ramp. And I'm going to add some more points by double clicking on the ramp. And I'm going to make the bottom of the ramp dark. And then I'm going to make the just above the horizon bit brighter. And then we're going to go back to dark at the top. So you can see that here. And I'm going to turn on log. So basically this ramp is linear. But when you see this ramp in an image, which is the render, which isn't linear, it's sRGB, you're pulling all the values to be higher and non-linear. The response is non-linear. Effectively, I use this log button to make the response almost like an inverse of linear. So when this ramp is seen in the render, which has got the sRGB transform applied to it, you get a lot more like what you'd expect. It's quite tricky to explain, but effectively it almost ought to be that log is the default in that this ramp is linear, this image is not, it's got sRGB. So as you're controlling this linear image, it's getting sRGB applied to it, and you kind of don't get what you're expecting. So the brighter bits get more blown out than you'd expect. So my rule of thumb is when you are controlling a gradient of any kind in Light Studio, it's great to turn on log because you get a result that's a lot more what you're expecting in this view. That's a simple way to explain it. So now we've got this ramp. I've opened up the this window for the ramp, so you can control the ramp, on here, and you can change values. But you can also press this button at the end, and then you get kind of a more complete set of controls for that ramp. So what I'm actually going to do is start to play with this horizon line and where it kind of starts and where it is finishing. And I'm doing this because I kind of really care about how this light is playing across the surfaces of this car. I think at this stage, don't worry about the background kind of here being dark and everything. We can sort that out. What I'm really concentrating on is we can go quite a long way lighting this vehicle by controlling this horizon line and where this falls across the car. So I'm going to use, so for this light, I'm going to increase the brightness by full stop by pressing the plus. It'll effectively double the brightness. And I'm going to do that again, which is slightly too bright. But I'm now going to, rather than have cosine interpolation, I'm going to use Bezier. And then I'm going to double click to create a new point. And then you can see I could create, I get more control over how this light is going from dark and through and kind of shaping that graduation. So this very bright bit now is very much at that horizon line. And then you get this nice kind of bright horizon that's kind of fading off in a nice controlled way. So that's why I've changed the interpolation. And then we still want a relatively hard edge to it. So I might need to put in another point here, and then we just visually use these and drag these to get that, control that edge. So the thing about lighting is it's very experimental. This car has got a lot of very complicated surfaces, and really, as a human lighting this, you can't predict how a change we make to this gradient is going to affect this vehicle, because you'll make changes, and so if you look here, this is an interesting place. I find that I find around here quite awkward. I don't like how it's got this little divey in bit. So as I kind of move this direction, that seems to make that travel in this direction and look even more awkward. So I'm going to kind of move that in this direction, maybe even start to try and move the whole ramp over, changing where that line is. So it may be that I need to come further this way. So the process is very experimental. And lighting by its nature is experimental. You are investigating how changes in the light that surround this are going to affect this particular model. And every car or product is totally unique and deserves custom lighting to kind of work with its shapes and its form. Effectively, this is lit at this point in time with one single graduation of lights that I've been playing with. And by softening this horizon line a bit, I've got rid of some of the awkwardness around here. We can address this in other ways in a bit, but I kind of like what is going on with how this graduation is affecting this model. So at this point in time, I think for a single light, I think that's doing a lot for the scene. So I'm very happy with that. So the next thing that I'm going to look at is the wheels of this car. So they're not really very alive. This general lighting that is working quite well in the body of the car is not particularly doing much for these wheels. So let's address that now. So the first thing is, let's have a look at our presets. And I would like to use a light that's kind of a soft half light. The reflection mode is on. So if I drag and I drop this onto this wheel here, it will be positioned to reflect. And I'm just going to adjust this by clicking on here, and that moves that. And I'll go back to my light properties and I will boost the brightness a couple of stops. And what I will importantly do is I will solo this light by pressing the solo button. And then we can see how this single light is affecting the scene. So yes, this light is getting some life in this wheel and a nice reflection. It's also creating one here on the car. I don't particularly want it there. I'm going to experiment with a few different positions to see how much difference that makes by clicking on the model. And then another way to tweak the lighting also is to come back to the HDR canvas, and you can actually just move the light kind of from side to side manually and use that as a kind of tweaking of that light. So you actually find that if you want the lights to light this wheel on the HDRI map, that it affects this bit, And then if you move it away to come this way to try and avoid that area, it goes on the rest of the car. So this is an ideal time to turn this light into an area light, a 3D light. So we'll use the area light checkbox. The light has now been created as an actual 3D light. And if I use Smart Dolly and I dolly that light right in, you can see that light in the view. It's gone way too close there. But if I just take that back, you can actually see this light now is reflecting beautifully in that wheel, and it's not having a very big effect on the rest of the scene, which is what I want. I want to bring that wheel alive, and that's really done that. So that's perfect. So if I then turn the solo off, we can see that light in the context of the rest of the shot, and I'm very happy with that. Now this light, you don't want to really see this in the view, and if we use the cam visibility setting and turn that off, that means that that light's now not visible to the camera, but it's still visible in reflections and it's still illuminating. So I'm very happy with that. So I'm going to duplicate this light, edit, duplicate, and I'm going to do the same thing at the back of the car. So I'm going to click on this wheel at the back, click again, and if I just move across and make that visible again, you can see where that is. That's been positioned using the reflection. Now I'm going to use the latitude and longitude sliders to make adjustments to the position of this. So rather than using light paint, I can kind of orbit that light paint position. So you can see that's going around in the anti-clockwise. If I just bring this slider this way, I want to basically find a nice spot for this so that the car itself is not receiving a reflection. So if I solo this, and I'm going to move it downwards if I can. There we go, that's moved down. And that's working nicely on that wheel. So I can turn off camera visibility. I can then totally see what that's doing to the wheel. I'll unsolo that light, and I will increase the height of that light. Okay, so that now is looking good. Turn off the camera visibility. And I'll just scroll back across. Okay, so I now want to use quite a small light, and I'm going to do a bit of a highlight on the mirror here. So I'll create a soft round light. I'm going to make it quite small, say 8 by 8 width and height, and I'm going to click on the mirror here. And I'm going to make the brightness very bright indeed to start with. Let's do 10,000. And let's solo this. And you can see, because I made that quite bright, it's created this nice shadow that is grounding the car. So I like that. Let's just turn that up. Sorry, solo that. So I'm liking the reflection on the mirror, but I don't like what's happening here. So a nice way to adjust this again is to go back to the canvas and just tweak about and see if we can find a nice position where we don't get a really major reflection going on, which that looks good to me, because that is just kind of creating that highlight there. I'm going to take down the brightness a little bit, unsolo that, and we've got a nice highlight and a nice bit of a floor shadow going there. So at the moment we've got this graduation behind the car, and I really want this car onto a white background. So to do this, I will go to my presets and I will get a soft light here, and then I'm going to change the light paint modes to rim, so that where I drop it, it will place it on the HDRI map in that location. And then I'm going to scale this up. And then I'm going to take down the brightness a little and then just increment it until it just goes into white and it's not blasting out too much. Okay. So I find it useful to get the background white if I know I'm going to create it's kind of a very studio style image. If we get the background white, you can make better decisions about the contrast and the lighting in the object itself. So I'm thinking that this background gradient, maybe we try boosting that a little bit. So I'm going to take that up a stop, and then that's actually a bit over the top. So I'm going to take that down a third. So it's kind of a balance now of the brightness, just balancing that out. Okay, so I want to get a bit more life on this windscreen. I'd like to try with just another soft light. So I will create a soft round light from the toolbar, and then I will change the light paint mode to reflection, and I'll click in the corner of this windscreen. Hi guys, just a quick note. I just had to pause the recording because I had a hell of a problem. I was clicking on this windscreen and the light was not moving to where I was expecting. And what it turns out is that the scene looks a bit of a mess now because I've been taking some objects out of the hierarchy. But this glass windscreen was actually set to hidden, but not hidden from the render. So when I was light painting in this view and clicking in this view, the light was actually going down here and not reflecting where I clicked whatsoever. So it turns out, because the windscreen was hidden from the view, that I was light painting on this inner surface, which was pointing down here, and it was moving the light to totally the wrong place. So make sure that when you are using light paint in HDR Light Studio and clicking on the model, that everything that you want to light is displayed in the view, or you will go mad trying to work out why it's not working properly. So let's get back to HDR Light Studio, and where we were at is we were clicking on this windscreen here to get a bit of light up in this corner, and let's just solo this light, and then we can use this button, click and hold, and kind of scale that down. So we just get a bit of a glance of light, and I'm going to take it right to that corner up there. And then maybe I will scale it up slightly. And then I'm going to see what it looks like if I just use the log to just soften that off a bit. And then we will unsolo that so we can see the rest of the lighting. And then I'm going to take that up a third of a stop using the little plus arrow, and then try that again. And actually for this, I'm going to undo the log button so it doesn't graduate off as much, and then I'm going to darken it off. So I do like having that light coming across there. I like the side of the vehicle here. I'm liking what we've got going on the wheels. Interestingly, if I just go to this wheel that's at the back, we've got this ramp is controlling the alpha, which is cutting it in half. I'm going to play with the idea of making the bottom of the light a bit brighter, so then we can bring a bit of brightness into the bottom of the wheel. I'm going to, as you can see from here, this is what we've done, because this graduation from top to bottom is what was cutting this in half. If I turn off this alpha multiply, basically the master content of this light is just a soft round bulb, and then using the alpha multiply, we've chopped this with this ramp, and I've made that go back to bright at the bottom, and I'm going to try the same on the one at the front. We've got alpha multiply, this position, I will bring that back up in brightness. Maybe not as bright, but some brightness. Yep, so I like that. So I'm liking this area. I'm liking the wheels. I'd like a bit more light on this part of the wheel. So I'm going to create a soft light. I'm going to make it be an area light. I'm going to bring it quite close, and I'm going to click here on the wheel. And I'm going to turn up the brightness of this and try and get it at a glancing angle and solo it to see what effect it has on the rest of the model. So I'm just going to play with the latitude and longitude just to kind of adjust this somewhat. And we're basically orbiting around that position. I'll try it a little bit closer to get less impact on the car body, and now give it a couple of stops just to boost that. And then let's look at that in context by unsoloing. So it's a bit too bright. I'll take it down a stop. I'll make it turn the camera visibility off, but that gives us a nice bit of a highlight on that tyre. The bonnet is this round light that I've added, I think is washing out the bonnet too much. So I'm going to try and find a position maybe where it doesn't affect the bonnet as much. Again, it's about searching for these positions that work. And sometimes you can't find a position. An effect here is going to create an effect here. And maybe that will mean that you change your mind on the lighting and decide that a light doesn't work. Oh, that's nice. So that, absolutely by random, I clicked in this area on the model. And actually, I found a spot that created a lovely bit of highlight on that wing mirror and a lovely, interesting highlight going along there. And I just scaled the light just to see, as soon as it comes into that bonnet, I'm not as keen on it. So scale it down a little bit. So we discovered let's see what that looks like in context. That's quite sweet. If I boost that one stop, that looks pretty cool. I want to get a bit more interest on the front of the car here. So let's just do a soft round light and click on here. Actually, I'll click round here, bring it round more. Let's try and find a sweet spot. Scale that up. Isolate it by soloing it. And you can see this effect, which works quite well. It's bringing a bit of graduation across here. I like that, so I'll turn that off. Sorry, I will unsolo that. Now the headlight hasn't got as much life in it as I'd like, So this light here, I'm going to duplicate that little light and click on here and solo this light now and make it visible. So I'm not sure where that's gone. Oh, here we go. So I've just clicked in the headlight and just trying to find a position that brings that alive, which is great. That's got some life, and I will turn off the visibility because I think it's here and it's actually blocking. And then I'll boost the brightness of that. And then I'll unsolo that. And we've got more life in that headlight. If I turn that light off, you can see it's, it's not pretty dark. Turn it back on. Got a boost. I'm going to duplicate that light again, and I'm going to try and create a bit of interest around this logo. I may make it a little further away. Let's make it visible. Control the ramp of the light. Take down the brightness, it's very bright. That's nice. I like that there. It's doing a good job. If I just solo that, it's doing a beautiful job around there on the car. So the lighting can be about making things brighter. It can also be about adding darkness. So here, I want to sell the idea more that this is chrome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my presets. I'm going to find a soft light and drag and drop that on here. I'm then going to make the brightness of that 0 and use blend mode over. So it actually now creates a dark spot where I've dragged it. And if I click on the model here, and then adjust the rotation of this light, and then I'll scale the height of that, and I'm just going to tweak the position. Let's just click on this side. Okay, so I'm going to click on here, put that there. I'm going to make it not very wide. So keep it quite focused in that that light is affecting that area, and make it more, make it a bit see-through, and then make it not as tall. So this light here, if I just turn it off, that's all perfect, and I've just put in a little bit of a imperfect graduation just to sell the idea that that is chrome. And then if I duplicate that, I could place one here. Let's see if there's any benefit in placing one there. Might have to rotate it differently. And then just bring that down a bit. Okay. As you add more lights, you need to think about the balance of the lights and how they're all working together. As And sometimes, you know, you can question why you've got certain lights in certain places. So I'm going to go through and actually turn every light off. Let me just do, can I do edit, all lights off. And I'm going to build the lighting back up again, one at a time, to really just make sure each light is doing what I want to, and just understand how each light is contributing and where things are going right, where things might be going wrong. So I think I'm going to miss out the detail lights that are the area lights and just stick with the ones that are on the HDR. I'm going to leave out this one, which is creating this really bright spot for the moment, because I've got a feeling we might be able to get rid of that one. I'm wondering about this one being brighter. Let's just test it. I think it's fussy. I think it's over fussy. I'm going to take this light back up here. I'm going to take down the brightness a lot. I'm going to leave that as is, and I'm going to reinstate this light here, creating this nice highlight. But I will soften it off more by adding the log and just taking control of this ramp more. We'll just solo that. Yeah, that's fine. Turn that one down, it doesn't need to be as bright. As I go along, I should have labelled all of these as well. It makes it a lot easier when you're managing your lighting. I haven't done that. I'm going to turn on the detail lights now, bringing the wheels alive. Yeah, I mean, it's looking pretty good. This is looking pretty good, getting pretty happy. I just want it to be a little bit more dynamic. I'm going to look at that light and make that an area light, this highlight one, and just see if that improves my shadows at all. See, and maybe bring it a bit closer. No, it adds nothing. I mean, you know, you're watching this. This is kind of about the fine tuning. You can get to kind of 80% of the lighting quite quickly, and then it becomes kind of a balancing act, which might be a bit boring to watch, but I'm just trying to explain to you my process of when I'm trying to light something and the things that I'm thinking about. I want to bring this alive more, want a bit more character. It's like here, if I just make a soft light and click on here and scale that down a bit, but then boost that up a bit brightness wise. And I kind of like the idea of boosting around here a bit. So if I just duplicate that and then click on here, scale it up a bit. You know, to me, that's really made a difference. If I turn that light off, that's what that looks like. And just by putting that light over the top, it's just created this boost. It's a little bit too bright, but turn it down a bit. That looks really nice. So I'm just eyeballing this model now. I'm literally coming back from the monitor, looking at this shot, looking at how the light is playing over that model, looking for any areas which bother me and I don't like. I think it's looking okay. You know, the main design features and the surfaces of the car are coming out. You can see this little kick here. You can see this major body line here, and you can see it come back under here. So, you know, a lot of that was coming out of the background gradient. I'd kind of like this still to be a bit more dynamic here on the windscreen. You saw me battling with that earlier. So I'm going to just turn that off, turn that on. Still needs a boost. To my eye, it still needs more interest. It needs more light in that area. Maybe I'll make it smaller to do that. I mean, to be honest as well, you know, I'm trying to do everything in one pass. And it might just be that for a light on that windscreen, we actually need to do two separate renders. One just for that windscreen, and then one where we don't have that affecting the bonnet. But I think it being brighter does help a lot. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that a bit brighter, and I'm going to have to take the hit of this on the bonnet here. I think the only thing I really want to do is do something to bring this bit alive here, because it looks flat to me. I'll get this light, Control D, duplicate it, click on here, and if I solo that, yeah, I mean that's doing exactly what I want actually. Turn everything back on. Just as a final touch, I'm going to make the background a little bit darker, and then create a soft light behind it, behind the car. Scale that down a bit. And that just gives you that kind of more natural, not consistent brightness behind the back of it. So it's I like that kind of hot spot behind the car kind of look. I'm going to try a total wild card thing, and then I'll try and leave it alone. I'm going to get around like a ring light, drop that on, solo that. And this, you know, it's a technique. It can be a great way to kind of get the edges of the car lit. Now I like it all apart from what it's doing on here. So if I scale it up a bit more. So if you go too big, you want it so it just is coming out of the view basically, and that will almost silhouette your car or your object with light. And then go back to the light properties for that. So that's good. And then I'm going to get rid of this bit of it. So I'll create a light, solo it as well so I can see it. Click on there. Reflection mode, click on there, reflection mode, and then make that over and dark, and then we scale this down. So it's basically this part of the ring is creating the funny bonnet wobbly bit, and then I'm using this light effectively to kind of mask that out. I'll scale it down till I get the bit I want and get rid of the wobbly bonnet bit. Oh, that's all right. So I'm going to select those two things, right click, merge them to a composite, and then that's add mode. So that's exactly what I want actually. So that now, those two blended together is creating this light, which if I turn it off, but I turn it back on, and I kind of get this bit of a line around the edge. I kind of like that effect. Okay, and you know, this is just fine tuning, guys. The final thing I'm going to do is get this ramp open, because sometimes you can have too much brightness in a scene, and I'm just going to tweak here to see if I can get this totally black, pull this along a bit to just get a little bit more contrast in the scene. Yeah. Okay, this is it. This is the end of lighting this shot. So I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll finish off by just kind of showing a before and after of where the lighting was at, what the shot looks like now. To finish this scene properly, we need to press the HDR button. I'm going to pick a resolution for the HDRI map, which I'm going to make 3K. I'm going to put a resolution for the area lights. Now they're all soft, so I can leave that 1000 pixel resolution for the area lights we make. I'm going to browse, and I'm going to put the lighting on the desktop, and I'm going to call this Nissan Lighting. That's what I'm going to call it. Save. And then I'm going to press render. And what this is going to do is generate all of my lighting at high resolution, high quality, as files on disk. And then these will be used in Cinema 4D and Redshift. Okay, so I'm happy with this. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope it showed you what you can do in terms of how lighting can totally transform an existing scene. We'll finish by showing a before and after of this scene, and the only thing that's changed is the camera view has changed slightly, and we've lit it using HDR Light Studio. So thanks for watching. Cheers, bye bye.